You just have to let go. Really? Let go, I shouted. What the hell does that even mean? I realized that 300 people were now staring at me as I yelled at my mentor, who was on stage at that time. And I continued shouting, and why is it that everyone is telling me that I have to let go and no one in the scene can actually show me how to, or what it is I actually have to let go of? My name is Guido Szymanski, and I was in my first coaching training at that time to become a health coach. And the developer of that program explained how we can get more background information on certain issues in our lives and thus release inner blockages. And to explain it better, he had asked for volunteers. So I offered myself naturally. After all, I could only win, right? And everything was fine until that moment when he so nonchalantly said that I just had to let go, and I just snapped. I had heard this sentence so many times before. It's just a phrase that is often just thrown around in the world of coaching and personal development, and yet no one seemed to be able to actually show me how to do it, how to let go. Hearing year after year that you have to let go and still not really being able to do it, or not even knowing what it really means, was apparently so frustrating that I snapped in a seminar with 300 participants watching me. I obviously had nothing to let go of. I obviously had no problem with it. Of course I did. And in fact, I was so shocked at my reaction that I started doing everything I could to learn everything about letting go, with a lot of success, which in turn brought me a huge progress in my career, but also in my private life and my health. Later on, I also helped my clients to let go and forgive. And you know what? He was right. It can actually be very simple if you know how to do it and what elements it takes. Once you realize what is actually happening inside you, both on a physical and an emotional level, if you hold on to all traumas, events, people, etc., things will almost happen by themselves. And the process of letting go becomes a pretty natural and increasingly easy one. Detaching from drama, learning forgiveness, and finding serenity in almost any situation is one of the most empowering things that ever happened to me. And if I can do it, really anyone can. I had been so caught up in guilt towards myself and the judgment from others for most of my life that I never thought I would ever feel free, that I could never become that famously empty canvas so you can create the life that you wanted. But that is exactly what happened. And today I would call myself a master of letting go. And I want to take you on a journey to show you that it's not half as hard as you might think. Like me back then, you might just be missing some information, insights, or tools and practices, but we can change that. Today, I'm a personal impact coach, and I work with people who are often in the public eye, and I help them under all that pressure, not only to become and stay the best, but above all, to enjoy their success and enjoy themselves. And whether it's the professional footballers and athletes I coach, the entrepreneurs and managers, or the actors, singers, and occasional pop stars, forgiveness is the one key that always comes up sooner or later when it comes to taking back a huge piece of your power. Yes, taking back your power to be happier, to feel freer, to access more of the resources we know we have, and even be healthier. Maybe you know this too. You want to move on in your life and somehow you can't let go or feel stuck. You want to trust people again, but it's like a flap that slams shut every time you meet a new person who might actually be good for you because you might have been used or mistreated or even abused in the past. You have the feeling that you are permanently stuck in the heads or the judgment of others, what they think, what they expect of you, etc. And you never find that free process of thinking, that inner peace. Or you feel that you have a lid on your career, your sport, your vision, and something doesn't let you go any further. You keep running into the same wall, so to speak, over and over again. Or maybe you carry some form of guilt for something that happened in the past, and you would like to stop punishing yourself, but you just don't know how. These are all symptoms that I know all too well from my own past, and I see again and again in my clients. But I also know very well the sentence that often follows after we work. Oh my God, I feel so much lighter. I feel like I've taken off a mega heavy load, a 100 kilogram heavy rucksack. Or as a participant in one of my recent workshops said, forgiveness for me is as if I opened the door to the cage in which I kept myself imprisoned and I actually walk out. And now I ask you, how would you feel if you went through life lighter, more carefree, and also happier? If you felt free again, free from fear, free to love, free to be loved, free to trust your instincts, free to do the things you feel are your true path, but which you may not have dared to do before, and free to unpack even more of your resources that you may not have had access to for a long time. How would you feel? Someone in my recent German premiere of the Power of Forgiveness Ultimate Freedom course said, at first I thought the title Ultimate Freedom, in German we call it Finally Free. At first I thought the title Ultimate Freedom was a bit exaggerated, but it exceeded all of my expectations. I feel free at last. And I know what this freedom can feel like. If what I share here resonates with you and you feel that you would probably also be freer, lighter, and possibly even more successful, if you could finally let go of some of the old stories, then this free video series is for you. For me, there's hardly anything more important in the world of personal development than this process of forgiveness. And that is why I have put together 3 short videos that build on each other and help you start the process. So let's dive right in, shall we? The most important thing first. Forgiveness is first and foremost about yourself and your well-being. For me, it's a self-care tool. And to explain this, I would like to shed light on why we normally do not forgive. Often something has happened to us that has brought us pain in the past, trauma, ridicule, physical assault, or even shame. And now we harbor anger and resentment towards the other person or ourselves for having done this to us. Understandably so. We want to make sure that this never happens again. First and foremost, we want to protect ourselves and build a wall of, let's call it, unforgiveness around us. We hold on to the anger for what you did to me to make sure it never happens to us again, and often also to give the other person a little bit of punishment. The feeling is often one of, you'll see what you get out of this. For instance, we close the room to protect ourselves and then send out negative energy as a permanent shield, so to speak. There's only one problem with that. By doing this, we keep ourselves permanently in the same energy that we actually want to protect ourselves from. Let me say that again. In order to protect ourselves, we keep ourselves permanently in the same energy from which we actually want to protect ourselves. That other person might not even exist anymore or may not care what you think. But the fact is that your inner resentment will do very little to him or her, but it will do a lot to you. It can block you and, in my experience, even make you very ill. That's why it's primarily about you and not the other person. And this insight often is one of the biggest shifts in letting go. That is why this is so very important for me to emphasize that. Also, we do not have to approve of what the other person has done. Quite the opposite. There are actions that need to be held accountable, possibly even brought to court, of course. But there's a big difference between the deed and the person who did it. And that's just to start with. Often, it is not the hard crimes that we have to forgive, although of course they exist and have to be taken into account. It's often more about things like, my mother didn't love me the way I needed it. My husband cheated on me, or my girlfriend betrayed me. My teacher made a fool of me, or my coach deliberately didn't use me, etc. But no matter how bad the hurt was, ultimately the root of healing is the same for you. To forgive is to release yourself from the energy you're trying to protect yourself from. The problem is often that the following fears arise now. The fear that if I forgive, it means that I say he was right and I was wrong, or she won and I lost. Another fear is often that by forgiving, we approve of what they did. That is definitely not true. And especially there's also the third fear, that is, if we forgive, we will bring that person back into our lives. Also not true. And these are just some of the myths I would like to dispel today, and that will probably take you a giant step further towards your freedom. First, to forgive is not to say the other person wins and I lose, or the other person was right and I was wrong. No. To forgive means maybe I can understand the dynamic behind you acting the way you did with your past, your upbringing, your own conditioning, or maybe I don't. And that's okay. It doesn't really matter, because the main point is I forgive you in order to release and free myself from that energy. Secondly, you are not condoning the act at all. Maybe you understand a little bit why the person acted the way they did. There's a famous quote where I couldn't find out exactly if it is from the Dalai Lama or Thich Nhat Hanh or someone else. And it says, forgive the person, but not the act. And that has always relaxed me. Only people who have been hurt in their own lives deliberately hurt others. That's why I say maybe you can understand, not necessarily comprehend, why he acted the way he did. Third, one of my favorite aspects when it comes to forgiveness, you can forgive someone and absolutely not let them back into your life. I forgive you, but stay the F away from me. This always brings such a huge relief when my clients hear this for the first time. Forgiveness gives you a new state of neutrality where you can decide what is good and what is right for you and what is not. For instance, forgiving gives you more power to really keep the person out of your life because you are more neutral. You no longer carry a hook around with you that chains you to the issue of that person. And through forgiveness, we unhook that attachment and you can decide more freely. So before we go into these next processes, I would like you to play with these thoughts. Find out if you can see the other person's point of view, understand their path, how they grew up, etc. There is a nice example for this. In my last international 6-week master's course, we experienced a very nice breakthrough with one of my participants that illustrates this quite nice. And she mentioned that she was never loved unconditionally by her mother. That is, her mother's love was always attached to conditions, how she behaved, what she achieved, how she looked. And this is my interpretation now. And they had not spoken, I think it was for 6 years. She said in one of our Q&As that she finds it hard to forgive her mother for ever loving her or for never loving her unconditionally. I think everyone can understand and feel that at first. When I told her that her mother probably never experienced unconditional love in her life herself, I could already see how her feelings changed. For this mother, most likely a war child, love was always conditional. Only in this way could she pass it on. I would even say that it was her way of loving. And at that moment, I saw my participant soften towards her mom. Perhaps there was even a small feeling of compassion for this person who had never experienced this kind of love. And already the door of forgiveness was a crack wider open than before. Do you understand? Was the mother's behavior good? No, of course not. Has it been understandable? Yes. But because of that, I do not approve of the act, but can perhaps forgive the person. And that applies to all areas. And the outcome was that after 6 years, they spoke for the first time and actually celebrated Christmas together. So the following sentence may sound very harsh at first, but it comes absolutely from the heart and is so important for me. I'm usually a bit more graphic with this, but I'll try to be gentle. I don't care whether something small or something very traumatic has happened to you. I don't care, but I do care if you still carry it around with you today. Now, I'm sure that your brain is already rattling. Now you know that forgiveness is indeed possible and that it is about bringing lightness to you and not about absolving the other person from their guilt. You know that it doesn't mean that you lose and the other person wins, that she was right and you were wrong. You also know that it doesn't mean you have to condone the act or bring the other person back into your life if you don't want to. But you do know that it is in your hands that your life can be easier and above all freer from now on, and that is already an enormous step forward. Now you might be asking yourself, how exactly can I go into forgiveness, and what does letting go really look like, and how do I practice that? And that's exactly what I'll be discussing in the next video, so keep an eye on my next emails. I would also like you to let me know in the comments what you think, what insights you have had from the video and what is on your mind, or if you have any questions, either comment under the YouTube video or in my section on the website if I manage to put it on there. And if you're not seeing this through my newsletter, but want to make sure you get part 2, then please go to guidoszymanski.com and just sign up for the Ultimate Freedom series, which is, of course, free and on my newsletter. And as I said, we'll see each other in a few days when it's about how you can implement what you've learned today. and then actively go into forgiveness. I see you then.